Hey guys, it's Shane Simmons here for another This Week in Appalachian History. I hope you guys are having a great week wherever you're watching this at. This will cover the week of June 14th through June 20th, and I'll jump right into this. First off, I do want to thank a new patron. David L. Mullins joined the team. Thank you so much for your financial support. As I've said a million times before, we could not do these shows if it were not for you and your financial support. So blessings to all, and thank you, Mr. David L. Mullins, for becoming a patron. Also, I got a letter this week too, which great for a couple of reasons. One, the letter's great. The other one is because it proves that my new mailing address works. So, yay! Small miracles. I got a letter here that says, "Dear Shane, my name is Daniel Armstrong, and I do want to stop here and say that Daniel is a longtime supporter. He goes back to even the early days of the old Appalachian Project channel. So he's been with us for a few years supporting, and I just want to acknowledge that for a second, Daniel. Jumping back into the letter. I'm one of your YouTube channel subscribers. I sent you some correspondence in February, but I think the USPS lost it, which is true. Hopefully this will find you well. I'm a graduate of Clinch Valley College, aka UVA-wise. My brother went there too. He graduated from there, and I remember living in Castlewood. I drove to Southwest Virginia Community College while he went to Clinch Valley College, which is now UVA-wise, of course. Your videos bring me back to a wonderful time in my life. Keep up the great work. I have a YouTube channel myself chronicling events in my hometown, but they aren't quite as polished as your videos. I have done some videos on the Demolition Derby at the Highland County Fair, Christmas parades in Hot Springs, Millboro, Craigsville, Virginia, and even donkey basketball. Well, I went and subscribed to your channel, and it's funny because I love seeing stuff like that because I guess it's the same reason a lot of people like my channel. I get to see a lot of things I would never get experience otherwise, so I was able to prowl around on your channel, Daniel, and anybody else that wants to subscribe to his channel. You usually can find him in the comments every few videos, so check it out. Just as I did, I endorse his YouTube channel. I love hearing from other folks that do these YouTube channels too. I've enclosed some postcards of local attractions from where I live. I plan on sending more later down the road. I hope you enjoy. Take care and God bless. Sincerely, Daniel Armstrong. Now, he sent this awesome postcard from the homestead in Hot Springs, Virginia. I don't know if you can see that or not. I hope so. Hopefully not too close or too far. I'll just move it around so you can see it. The homestead, I was blessed with being able to stay there for a weekend a few years back, and man, it is amazing. You drive up this winding, twisting road and you think, oh my goodness, it's like the setting for The Shining, but it is a phenomenal place to stay. If you ever get a chance to check it out, I highly recommend it. And thank you, Daniel, for sending that postcard because it brought some great memories, and honestly, I didn't have any souvenirs or mementos from my trip there, so this is super helpful for that, so thanks a ton. Getting into this week's history, June 14th, Pat Summitt was born in 1952 in Clarksville, Tennessee. Of course, Pat Summitt was the iconic women's coach for University of Tennessee basketball, and she was a silver medalist herself as a player in 1976 and during the Olympics in Montreal, and she also was a gold medalist as the head coach of the 1984 team. And she was a coach for 38 years at UT from 1974 until 2012. She never had a losing season, and she never missed the NCAA tournament during that whole stretch, which is mind-boggling. Especially given recently, see that UT's kind of struggled without her, but she really made that a national powerhouse for pretty much her whole reign as head coach, during which she won 8 NCAA championships. She was inducted in the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame in 1999, which was the inaugural class of that Hall of Fame. She was named the Naismith Coach of the Century in 2000, and which is hard to believe to think that she coached for 12 more years after that and won 2 more national championships. So she got a good head start on being Coach of the Century for the 2000s. But she was named the Sporting News 11th top head coach of all times, and that is, she was the only female to appear in that list, which is quite impressive. Sadly, she was diagnosed in 2011 with early onset Alzheimer's, and she retired after the 2012 season when the disease became debilitating for her, and then she unfortunately passed away in 2016 at the age of 64, but she left a lasting legacy that will be remembered for eons to come. Going on to June 15th, Blind Alfred Reed was born in 1880 in Floyd County, Virginia. And he was a country and old-time musician, singer, songwriter, and he was actually recorded at the Bristol Sessions in 1927, which is the big bang of country music. He was on that album, and he, along with Jimmy Rogers and of course the famous Carter family. The song he recorded there, "The Wreck of the Virginian," was a major hit for him, and he's known for one called "How Can a Poor Man Stand Such Times and Live?" And this last song was recorded also by Bruce Springsteen. He did a remake of that at one point. So Blind Alfred Reed quit recording in 1929, so he really just had a 2-year recording career, and he lived out the rest of his life in Princeton, West Virginia area. He did some preaching. He was a Methodist lay preacher. He performed a little bit on the side, but he actually quit performing in public in 1937 because they had a crackdown on blind performers in that area. So he basically was out of the music business at a very early age. He died in 1956, and sadly was said to have died of starvation, which was a very tragic ending to his story. The story of Blind Alfred Reed. Sticking with June 15th, 1970, the Land of Oz theme park opened in Beech Mountain, North Carolina, to much fanfare. It was the actress Debbie Reynolds was there along with her daughter Carrie Fisher, who you probably remember for portraying Princess Leia in the Star Wars movies series. So Princess Leia was actually in Beech Mountain, North Carolina. That's pretty cool. But they cut the ribbon. It was a big production when they opened it, and they had 4,000 guests on that opening day, so it was a pretty massive hit. Of course, the theme park had a Kansas home of Dorothy. They had, of course, the Yellow Brick Road and Emerald City. So and along the way, the guests would encounter the Scarecrow, Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion, Dorothy, as well as the Wicked Witch of the West. So had all these cast of characters you could interact with, but it started off with much success. But on December 28th, 1975, there was a big fire that had burned down most of Emerald City. And even though they tried to rebuild it, the ownership changed hands. It was never really the same, and it closed for good in 1980. And unfortunately, one of the casualties of that fire was the original dress Judy Garland wore in The Wizard of Oz. The thing with the Land of Oz Park would always had just a troubled history. The owner, Grover Robbins, who built the place, it was his brainchild. He passed away a few months before it even opened. So it really just got off to a bad start and had a few good years, but kind of tapped out. It actually now opens up now. They've refurbished it a bit, and it opens up for a few select dates during every summer, and you can also book it for a private tour if you have that much money. And if there's a lot of interest in that, and I get enough donations, I might get a private tour of that and do a video on that later this year. Just seeing how it goes. Everything depends on finances as usual, because unfortunately that is the way this world works. And I'm not the kind of guy to just break in and shoot videos. Going to June 16th, 1966, a man by the name of Randy Barnes was born in Charleston, West Virginia, and he was a gold medalist in the 1996 Summer Olympics in shot putting, and he was a silver medalist in 1988. He broke the world record in May of 1990, and it is actually still the world record. Unfortunately, he was barred for life from competing after being caught with taking a banned substance in 1998. So he served a life sentence of being banned from his sport. But he still has the world record, so there's something to be said for that. On June 7th, a man by the name of Clyde Julian Red Foley was born in 1910 in Blue Lick, Kentucky. So in 1930, he started, a talent agent saw him and decided to sign him to play with the house band on the National Barn Dance, which was the country music radio program that predated the Grand Ole Opry. It actually led directly to that. And in 1937, he came back to Kentucky and established the Renfro Valley Barn Dance. 1939, he was the first country artist to host a network program. He co-hosted the NBC's Avalon Time with Red Skelton, the famous Red Skelton. 1941, he appeared in the film The Pioneers with Tex Ritter, who obviously is known a lot for his Western movies. 1941, he also sang the song Old Shep, about a dog he'd owned as a boy. That song was actually later recorded by Hank Snow, and even Elvis Presley did a version of Old Shep. It's a very iconic song for its time. He was the first country music artist to record in Nashville, Tennessee, believe it or not. Can you imagine that? It was a nice little claim to fame. In 1946, he emceed and performed on the Prince Albert Show, which was a segment of the Grand Ole Opry that was aired on NBC Radio. So in 1951, tragically, his wife committed suicide, so he dialed back on his performance and really reevaluated his life. He also, in 1951, recorded the gospel song "There Will Be Peace in the Valley for Me," which sold over 1 million copies and became an iconic gospel song. He had a couple of nicknames during his life. He was known as Mr. Country Music and America's Favorite Country Gentleman, and also the Barnyard Bing Crosby. I like that one, Barnyard Bing Crosby. That's catchy. He was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1967, and sadly, on September 19, 1968, he passed away in his sleep after performing at the Grand Ole Opry. And his last song that he sang was "There Will Be Peace in the Valley for Me," and a couple of witnesses were there. There was Hank Williams Jr. and some other people that heard him talking spiritually about his own salvation and that type of thing that very night. So it gave them a little bit of comfort about where he went after he departed this life. Sticking with June 17th, David Stringbean Aikman was born in 1915 in Annville, Kentucky. He was a singer, songwriter, musician, comedian, actor, and even at one time a semi-professional baseball player, believe it or not. He is most remembered for his outfit. He wore this super, extremely long shirt, which I'll show you a picture of, and really short pants that belted up right at his knee level. And so he had a very comedic appearance. He was one of the original performers on the Hee Haw television show, and he was also a regular on at the Grand Ole Opry. So later in his life here, Stringbean was a victim of murder. Unfortunately, him and his wife that just performed at the Grand Ole Opry and came home when they were jumped by some would-be robbers who had stayed there for several hours, and they shot Stringbean dead after a brief struggle, and then, despite his wife Estelle begging for mercy, they shot her dead as well. And they took a few items from him. He was known to carry a lot of cash, and he'd keep it in he wore these overalls, and a lot of times they said he would keep cash stuffed in there and had it hidden throughout his house. So I think that word may have traveled around and led to his demise, unfortunately. But their bodies were found by none other than Grandpa Jones, who was also a performer on Hee Haw. I can imagine how traumatic that was for him. He actually testified at their trial for the two cousins who were convicted of his murder. He testified that the watch that was found in their possession was one that he had given Stringbean as a gift. And the cousins were John and Marvin Brown. They were convicted of murder and sentenced. Marvin died in prison in 2003 at Brushy Mountain down in Tennessee, and John was actually granted parole in 2014 after serving 41 years of a 198-year sentence. So he's actually, unless he's passed away recently, which he might have, he may be on the loose. Moving on to June 19th, Lester Flatt was born in 1914 in Duncan's Chapel, Tennessee. He was a bluegrass musician, and he's best remembered for his time with Earl Scruggs. They formed Flatt and Scruggs and the Foggy Mountain Boys bluegrass band. He had also been a member of Bill Monroe's band in the 1940s, but Flatt and Scruggs is where he really made his name. They were very popular to begin with. They're they're definitely best known for the recording of the Ballad of Jed Clampett for the Beverly Hillbillies television series, on which they also appeared. Now, if you don't know that song, I don't know if I can help you. Well, I will anyway. I'll try. You know me. Come and listen to the story about a man named Jed, a poor mountaineer, barely kept his family fed. Then one day he was shooting at some food, and up through the ground came some bubbling crude oil, that is Texas tea. Oh, okay, I quit. Moving right along from that disastrous performance, they parted ways in 1969. Flatt and Scruggs broke up. They had a disagreement about the direction of their music. As Earl Scruggs kind of like a more modern, wanted to be a little bit more diverse, and Lester Flatt wanted to stick more with the traditional bluegrass variety. So they kind of had a disagreement, and they ended up not speaking for 10 years. Until 1979, while Lester Flatt was in the hospital, Earl Scruggs visited him, and they actually even briefly discussed reuniting once Lester Flatt healed and recovered from his sickness, but unfortunately it proved to be his deathbed, and he passed away in 1979 at the age of 64. And he and Earl Scruggs were inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1985, and they were part of the inaugural class of the International Bluegrass Hall of Fame in 1991. Finally, June 20th, Chet Atkins was born in 1924 in Luttrell, Tennessee. He's a musician, songwriter, and record producer, and he's known as Mr. Guitar and also the Country Gentleman. Rolling Stone magazine credited him with inventing the more pop-wise Nashville sound that they credit for rescuing the commercial sales of country music. So he had a big hand in a lot of the direction of country music during that time. He's inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Musicians Hall of Fame. George Harrison of the Beatles listed him as a major influence on him. Was listed as the 21st top guitarist of all time by Rolling Stone magazine. He had 14 Grammys. He got a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Grammy organization, and just a massive career of accomplishment. He passed away in 2001 at the age of 1977. So that was quite a country music heavy week, I must say, which is probably more what people expect, I guess. But hope you guys enjoyed that. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you guys for liking, subscribing, and supporting us. Thank you, David Mullins, for joining the patron team again. And always put if you're looking to contribute and make donations, I'll put that in the description of the videos. Your donations are why I'm able to do this, and hopefully we'll see you again next week, and enjoy this week. And that's all. I'm out of here. See ya.